Well, how brilliant is this? Thank you everyone so much for coming to this event. It's 40 years since the launch of let me get this right. It's 40 years since the launch of London Fashion Week, and I'm really excited to have everyone here. We're at a transitory time in the industry, and it's so great to see all these people who want to be about the change. We're here to support and listen and learn from the brilliant Clare Press, who's written this fantastic book, Where Next? Fashioning the Future. Now, I haven't read all of it yet, but I'm thoroughly enjoying what I'm reading. I think it's totally on the money about the direction that the industry needs to go in. It's really exciting. My name's Tamara Gingic. I'm the CEO of an organisation called Fashion Roundtable, and Clare has been with us since the beginning as our global sustainability expert. What she doesn't know about where the industry's been and where it needs to go, well, it's all in the book, and it's definitely worth knowing. And I'm really excited, thinking about those 40 years, to have Karen Franklin, who, let's face it, has been a leading voice in the industry from her days at ID, and many of us will remember the clothes show, and is such an icon for British fashion. And I'm really excited to invite Karen onto the stage, who will be interviewing Clare. Thank you very much. Please give Karen a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Tamara, for that delicious opening. I wasn't expecting that. Always nice. I'm, of course, thrilled to be here also to support Clare and all of these positive stories. And I noticed some of you have already made a purchase. Well, the really good news is, of course, you will be getting that signed by the woman herself, no matter how long it takes. So a long queue or not, Clare, you're here for a while. We will be also in a short but perfectly crafted conversation a little later on. But first, we have some amazing speakers who will each do a very brief reading from a chapter within the book, Where Next? So first, I would like to welcome on the stage, and I'm just going to move a stage left, to welcome on Belle Jacobs, ex-fashion editor, current activist, community organiser and speaker for climate justice and animal rights. She will read from Chapter 7, Less.
Less. Yes, less. Imagine. Earth Overshoot Day is later every year. We're moving in the right direction with planetary boundaries. Just 2 out of 9 are exceeded now, and the world is on track to reach its goals with those in the next few years. Watching the good news stories roll in brought everyone together. Everyone pitches in to reduce our collective footprint. We are prospering in a post-growth society where happiness and collective well-being are considered economic priorities. Wardrobes have shrunk. We own fewer items of clothing, which is liberating. We can't believe our parents amassed too many clothes to actually wear. How weird is that? It sounds stressful too. Suffocation. Anxiety levels are low in our communities. Banning advertising helped, although it was controversial at the time. Opponents said it would kill retail, media, fashion as we know it. And of course, things did change. But the funny thing is, more people are passionate about what they wear these days because you don't have to be cash rich to participate. Fashion is seen as a vehicle for personal storytelling. DIY culture makes it creative. Everyone loves secondhand everything. Minimalist styling was trending, but these days we recognize that it takes all sorts aesthetically. You can still dress flamboyantly without having an excess of clothes. And when we do buy, we choose well because we know it's got to last. We've stopped trying to bust limits. We seek balance.
Belle, perfectly put. Thank you very much. And that just kicks the evening off beautifully. So I'd now like to welcome Ashita Kabra, founder of By Rotation, who will read from Chapter 12, Shared.
Imagine, society has become less individualistic. There are more avenues to share what we're not using with people who need it, which makes everyone happier and strengthens communities. It feels good to be generous, but also access over ownership simply makes sense. Who wants to store stuff they don't need? Smaller living spaces helped spell the end of massive wardrobes. Some people do still have big houses, but clutter has gone out of style. There's more status in collecting experiences than physical objects. We rent, we share, borrow, and swap fashion items for practical reasons. Our wardrobes are generally divided in two: core garments that we own and fashion highlights that we share. In terms of buying to keep, we still shop for underwear, activewear, basics like jeans, and the pieces we wear on high rotation. We borrow much of the rest: accessories, outfits for parties, holidays, dates, office clothes, and coats. Luxury fashion rental sites provide access to amazing designer outfits at a fraction of the retail price. And there are many other options, from peer-to-peer rental apps to free community clothes swaps. Fashion has become more social, and people are better dressed than they used to be.
Thank you, Ashita. Can I just say, we're all in on that. I am now welcoming to the stage Kat Herity. She's co-founder of Mend Assembly, a network of grassroots maker spaces with mending workshops and local production facilities. Kat will read from Chapter 11, Repaired.
Thank you. Repaired. Imagine. Public pressure led to the extension of the right to repair laws, and the age of built-in obsolescence ended. Repairing damaged items is now cheaper and more convenient than replacing them. Brands design for longevity and also for disassembly, making it easier to fix specific components. Luxury retailers were the first to offer in-house care and repair services, but the high street followed, and these days every neighbourhood has its trusted independent providers. As the industry around reconditioning fashion grew, more skilled specialists launched their own businesses. Alterations and tailoring shops are booming. Dry cleaners no longer use harsh chemicals, and most offer hand washing and will secure loose sequins and beading. Apps connecting us with the best providers for specialty services like depilling knits, darning holes, and re-dyeing faded items. Millennials remember when the cobblers were all old men who struggled to find apprentices, and there was a real worry that their skills would die with them. But today's fashion schools run practical courses that equip students to enter this thriving modern industry. Membership of artisan guilds has never been so high. It's not just professionals, more amateurs have upskilled. Visible mending is a badge of honor, and the Japanese techniques of sashiko and boro to patch clothes and kintsugi to repair ceramics are popular globally. We have repaired relationships too, with our stuff, with the people who made it in the first place, and with the earth. We are sending way less fashion to landfill.
Yay. Absolutely. Thank you, Kat. We're all feeling so optimistic already. Our last reader is pioneering designer Christopher Rayburn, who fittingly will read from Chapter 5, Upcycled.
Right, no pressure, I'm the last one. So, upcycled. Imagine, nothing useful goes to waste. Upcycling is the cornerstone of our circular economy. Children dream of careers where they get to use their hands fashioning new, better quality items out of old ones. Textiles are considered precious. So important. Since there's more than enough existing material to go around, virgin production is limited. While there's a place for new biotech materials, natural fibres grown on regenerative farms and artisan-made handlooms, of course the ultimate luxury, the majority of our clothes are made by reimagining what we already have. You see the thread here, guys, I hope. Brands list their overstock on digital marketplaces, so it's easy to source and find new things. But anything discarded is fair game, and creative kids revel in upcycling garbage. A shirt made from a broken umbrella found on the streets. The ruffled... Aha! A shout out as well. The ruffle detail on a sleeve made from an old sweet packet. Guessing what things used to be in their former lives becomes a new fashion sport. There's a wide knowledge on fibre structures and properties, as well as recycling technologies. Fashion students learn how to create re-roll fabrics by restitching together offcuts. They unravel old sweaters in order to re-knit the yarn and weave with the unconventional materials. At first, retailers were resistant, unsure with how to deal with the idiosyncrasies of upcycled products. It turns out, after all, the customers didn't want carbon copies. They wanted something new.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Christopher. And may I say, no mean feat to have maintained a business for, nearly 20 years, would it be, in this environment? Congratulations. We love a success story. So here we come to the chair moment. And of course, one of them is for our woman of the moment. Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Copenhagen, Berlin, and now London. It's been a packed schedule for you. So please, a hearty welcome for our woman of the moment, podcast visionary, activist, and author, Clare Bress.
I got up there at the wrong time. She was saying visionary. I should have stayed. Thank you very much.
So there's just a few things that I want to say, and I was sort of reading comments on it, and I absolutely loved this quote. This is the book to make you unstuck. As a designer, you can feel overwhelmed. I don't know about you, but I got a sense of feeling unstuck, just because we're all in the same community, not having to even consider making product, but still feeling what is the next move. And it's all laid out in your book. So just tell me, the key underpinning of this has been an opportunity to be really positive, hasn't it? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And I do want to sort of answer your question at length a bit, talking about the power of optimism and the need to create space to focus on that. But before I do that, I just want to say a few quick thank yous, if you let me. First of all, thank you to the Conduit for graciously hosting us, and to Rosie and her team. It's fantastic to be in here. And huge thank yous to the friends who I reached out to and said, could you stand up here and read from the book? Ashita's in the book, so her story is contained in its pages. And to Belle, so thank you so much for both of those things, for telling your story and then for reading. And to Belle and to Kat and to Chris, it was generous of you, so thank you. And then just last of all, just to you, and there's a reason for this. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being in this room. Lots of friends and family is a special boon. But so many of you here this evening are part of the revolution that we are seeing already in this industry. So many of you already do the stuff that I think is starting the future fashion industry that we want to see, or maybe not industry, community, world that we want to build. So in a roundabout way, that is answering your question, because this idea of focusing on the positive came and percolated up from the people that I'm so lucky to talk to with my podcast and through interviews. And I think, Karen, we were talking about this the other day. It's so obvious that our world is overwhelmingly distressing right now, with Palestine, with wars everywhere, with genocide, with violence, where do you want to stop? We haven't even mentioned the climate crisis. People are rightly, with domestic politics. And actually, Tamara was going to mention some of the context of what we're dealing with right now in this country, with recession, with all of it. I'm not saying we shouldn't hold that very clearly in our minds and be realistic about it. However, I wanted to write a book that gave us permission, if you like. You don't need permission from me. That encouraged you to be intentional, to make the time to imagine a better future. And I think if we don't do that, I really firmly think we won't be able to build it if we can't see it. What do you think?
So true, and having read quite a bit of it, it is, for those of you who are just in touch with the copy now, it is very inspiring, it's very moving, it's very galvanising as well. That's what I felt. And just that feeling of being connected to people who are visionaries, pathfinders, out there already. You know, what's amazing, I think, is when you start to read the dates that some people began on this path, and actually they've been doing it a long time, and they've had to navigate all of those solutions for where people weren't ready to hear. And as we now move to this space where people are ready to hear, it feels like we're cusping change.
And I mean, I know that I'm going to miss some people, but I just want to say, for example, Safia Mini sitting here, this is not new. Focusing on the possibility of creating a fair, just, ecologically, socially beautiful industry is not a new idea. And there are so many people who've done this work for, like you say, 20 years more.
30.
And so, yeah, and so when we think about the future, we're actually building on the present, I hope, as we imagine this world. And I think we might talk about Cindy in a minute, so I won't say her. But yeah, I think, as you said, it's not like it's not there. It's there if you look, these pockets of inspiration. And I think what I was trying to do with this book was acknowledge the difficulty in the world, but then say, if we want to see an upcycled, beautiful future, and I shouted about Katie Mason, who's sitting there from Trash Club, making the sleeve of a blouse from a Haribo packet she picked up out of the street. These stories are already here. And so I think it's about, like you said, noting the optimism that's there if we look for it.
One of the devices I love is the 16 chapter headings. So we heard some readings, just the little chapter openings, which kind of straight away draw you into an emotional landscape before you begin to read about the facts. What sort of dictated or kind of pointed to the areas you wanted to cover?
I think many conversations with people who know more than I do about specific areas threw up these ideas of, I'm going to say, shaping factors that are most likely to influence our future. And they're things like less and this degrowth idea. They're things like, I mean, I won't go through them all, you can have a look, but I will mention maybe that some are in tension. So one chapter is about slow, thank goodness, that we relish. And one chapter is about ultra fast, because that's happening at the same time. So if we're going to be realistic about the things that are going to shape our future, they can't all be delightful. To me, I think ultra fast is the terrifying bit. But I tried to find some stories that made sense of, or that gave us an opportunity to frame ultra fast in a positive way. So there's a story in the book about making to order. And it's a business in Sydney, actually, and they can turn a T-shirt around in 10 minutes if you want. But no, in an ethical, sustainable, incredible way. They don't do that, but he was saying it's possible. So it was about looking for the possibility within the themes that might freak us out.
Yes, nice one. And I pulled out two to talk about because they sort of played to my brain's requirement for some science and some technology. So let me just bring in traceable. I love the idea, of course, that there is going to be soon the sort of garment tracing, the materials, the resourcing, the journey, and that we might all learn this really quite quickly before a purchase. I thought we might be a way away, but actually the science in this chapter just blew my mind. Tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the themes in the book is traceable, and it's this idea that we might keep eyes on assets as they move through the system, if you like. If we're going to recycle, we need to know where everything is before we can even begin to think about creating material-to-material recycling systems. But again, it's already happening. And I know that Cindy Rhodes, here she is, from Worn Again is in the room. Her story is in the book. And also her insights on what needs to happen outside of what she's doing, but around the world, for this system to connect itself, if you like, to capture our discarded, unwanted, potentially unwearable textiles as they disappear from our closets and potentially end up on beaches in Accra in Ghana, ruining once wild places. So that's a bad story, but the story of tracing these garments in the future, if we get it right, might turn that on its head. And I think you liked the idea of the product passport, where we could buy something and find out a great deal of data about who made it and the story of it, right? And that's also happening now.
And also that digital ID that you talk about, which is a blueprint for the garment, which exists in parallel with the garment itself in terms of deconstructing it, which I just thought is a fantastic idea. So much there to advance our knowledge as citizen participants when we are engaging with clothing. The other one, of course, I wanted to talk about, because let's bring nature in, is the sort of biointelligent space. And there's an awful lot. There's an umbrella term, isn't there? Because you break it down, there's so much bioprocess which actually needs understanding, because the umbrella term can actually hide quite a bit, can't it?
Absolutely. Before we proceed, though, can I just say, citizen participants. So Karen is on my podcast in 2 weeks' time, and we had a very interesting conversation about representation, about who is left out of the fashion conversation and what we need to do about it. But you were really emphatic that we don't want to be thinking of ourselves as consumers. So shout out to citizen participants.
Liking it, thank you.
But this idea of biointelligent material, I think when you talk about the future of fashion and textiles to people, one of the first things that comes to mind as a delightful possible future scenario is that we would have these incredible new materials with a smaller footprint environmentally that we could switch to. And while that is quite a long way away in terms of how much rubbishy polyester we continue to churn out, it is an exciting frontier. And I know, there she is, Amanda Johnson helped me a lot with this book, and Nina Morenzi and the team at Sustainable Angle, who again have been pioneering this discussion around new materials for a decade. This isn't new. And yet the magic of some of these very next generation materials is new, and some of these stories about how we might harness bacteria and algae to create new material ideas is magic. And so there are some of those stories in the book.
And actually, when you take in an exhibition like Sustainable Angle, you just cannot help be blown away by the creativity of scientists, by the creativity of people applying this very specific knowledge to, we come back to clothes and identity. Tamara, you talked about how important it is. And of course, at the beginning, certainly when I began in the very early 80s, that power of being able to express yourself through your clothing choices and being read. Of course, we're still all doing that, and we're still all wanting to know, oh, second-hand, upcycled, where do you get that from? Oh, yes, that brand, they do that and that. And we are talking about brand values. But back to, and we'll make this our concluding point, dreaming. You wanted to create a space for dreaming. Is it, for you, is there real pleasure in feeling that, yes, you have achieved that?
Thank you. That's a lovely question. They're not very hard questions, are they? Thank you. I think what I set out to do with this book, like I said, was to create some kind of space or encouragement, I think is the word, for people to really look for the beautiful beginnings of things that were already sparking and then find their own way. There's 16 ideas in the book. They're not by any means the end of the story. They're only the beginning of it. And what I wanted to do was just to throw it open to the reader, to you, to the storytellers within the book, to take that to the next step. So this idea of dreaming, I think, is very personal. It isn't a book where I tell you what's going to happen. I don't know. I can tell you what I care about, and I can share some stories, some of the many stories out there of people already doing things differently. And hopefully, one or two of them will grab your heartstrings and you'll want to follow it. I can also see Brooke Roberts-Islam there, and I want to say shout out to you and your amazing work, because when we talk about materials, for example, we need to hold this industry to account. But when I started thinking about this book, it was much less about holding the industry to account than my previous stuff has been. And I wanted to really give us space to dream a little. And that's why these chapter heads begin with the word imagine and ask us to take a breath, take a moment and say, what could we do if we wanted to? And I think the last thing I will say is it's an invitation. And so there is no answer. Actually, yesterday, a very wonderful journalist who had a dinner for me, lovely, Marion Hume, she said about the cover, which I had no hand in. It was designed by a very good graphic designer in Sydney. She said, oh, I love this cover because it's a tangled mess of possibility. And I was like, God, it never occurred to me. But her idea of that was that we can never find a linear answer to sustainability questions. I always say this too, like people want A or B. It never is. But she liked that it was a tangled, non-linear, messy, fabulous possibility. And isn't that humanity? I don't know.
Perfect. Bring this a close with a messy, fabulous possibility for the way ahead. Before we thank Clare, I'd just like to say to each and every one of you, you are able to Instagram this and promote tonight and these ideas furiously. I'll be checking each and every one of your accounts to see that you have been good journalists. Any of you who work in education, this is a book that needs to get into the libraries and onto the curriculum. And so, again, that needs promotion from those of you able to do it. But time for a personal moment, because Clare will now move to a space where she can sign and you can gaze at her adoringly, which I think is only right and fitting at the end of this evening. So I'd just like to remind you that the bar is now open. Do mingle, do dream, and do join with me to thank Clare Press.